Well, good afternoon, everyone, and it's good to see you, and very much appreciate that you're willing to add your time and effort to this hosting of Winter Nights. It's a very important thing. It's one of the most important things we do together as a congregation every year is to lend our collective energy and our space and make it a sanctuary and home for people for 2 weeks. So I want to say just a couple things before I go through the handouts that you have, and one of them is that this is one of the times when we come together as a community to do this active service, which is also, I think, an opportunity for each of us to grow. And I think when we think of it that way, we actually come in with the right orientation about it, which is to think of the opportunity that we have to engage and learn and be present to people, which allows us to enter into it with a spirit of mutuality that I think is important. You'll notice in one of the handouts that Winter Nights refers to the people that they serve, understandably from their perspective, as their clients. We refer to them as our guests. And that's an important hospitality distinction that I think is important to note about the way that we try to do this here in this congregation. We want to keep in mind that these are people who are absolutely facing some of the worst times of their lives and a vulnerability to their circumstances that is very heartrending. These are parents who have to know that they have not been able to meet one of the basic expectations of parenthood, which is to provide a safe roof, a safe place for their children. That is a heartrending experience as a parent. And so, often they are overwhelmed by that. They are even emotionally shut down by that. They are, often not exhibiting their best parenting skills. And you need to keep in mind that the economy that we have lived in for the last 3 years, we've done this now, for those 7, but or this will be our 7th, but the program has changed since when we started. When we started, it was a rotating shelter, and people would come in, they would be there for a couple weeks, the staff would work, and they would find shelter for the families would leave, and more families would come in. And as the housing crisis has worsened in our county, we have seen more and more families that came in the first week the shelter opened, and they are still with the program those last weeks. And that is where we serve. We always step in around the Easter holiday, because for other faiths, that's the week before Easter is a very intense liturgical week. They have a lot of events. And so it's difficult for them to host in their public spaces, their fellowship halls and such. So we host during that time. What that means is that we get people at the height of their anxiety, because only a few weeks after they are with us, they will be back out on the streets. And in many cases, they do not know whether there will be anything that will receive them on the other end. The Winter Night staff is pretty amazing. And almost every year, somehow they pull out finding homes for almost everybody. It used to always be everybody. There was absolutely no question, but the housing situation has worsened so much that we can't assure that. And I say that because I think it's very important for us to leave our judgments at the door and also leave our advice giving at the door. We cannot know the struggles that these families are going through, and we cannot understand what they're going through. And I think that's a really important part of the way that we try to orient ourselves in that spirit of respecting the worth and dignity of all. So that's an important piece that I just wanted to say. So I'm going to go over the sheet that says MDUUC Winter Nights Orientation. And so what's really important is that you know that we have some basic responsibilities in our agreement with Winter Nights, and we are one of the kind of consistent congregations with Winter Nights. We do provide the space for about 30 people and their belongings. Our hall gets transformed into a village of tents, and each of those tents represents somebody's home for that time. So it's important, again, to respect that that is their boundary, their home. We provide a point person who organizes the volunteers from our congregation. Carol Sue's walking away, but all the years we've done it, it has been Carol Sue Kane. She's leaving the room, in fact, and we are really grateful. that she actually is going to step down this year. So if this is something that you feel particularly called to, keep that in mind, because we expect to replace her with at least 4 people, because that's how much work she's done over the years and how much that job has grown. So anyone who thinks this might be their calling and their way of serving through the church, please see me afterward. And we also provide volunteers to staff all the program activities. And our goal is always to get as many people as possible. Generally, we have about 120 volunteers that we cycle through during these 2 weeks. We could do it with a lot less. We try to do it with a lot more, because the more of us have this interaction, the more we own this as a full congregation. We also need people to do everything, including laundry, site setup and breakdown, prepare food, prepare meals, wash dishes, do some basic cleaning. And then some of the most important and most difficult things to fill are the evening and weekend activities. And our numbers go down on the weekends because some people have passes to go. They want to go see their friends, or they have places to go that they're exploring, new communities they might be living in, because increasingly people are realizing they cannot stay in our area and find housing. But we do need people to do the evening and weekend activities, the sleepovers, and also to, the sleepovers are really important. I have done it numerous times. Basically, you bring something to sleep on, a mat or a cot or something, and we put you in one of these spaces usually. We have one member that sleeps in the Heritage Room, which is an interesting thing to do because it has an automatic light that's motion censored. So she sleeps under the table in the Heritage Room so as not to trigger the sensor, but people do it every year, and it's a really important job, and we need to have people here. It's part of our commitment. So if you feel like you could do that, let us know. And then, as I said, we do all the other aspects. So we are actually the support team for Winter Nights, but we need to keep in mind that they actually have a very competent and trained staff, a number of whom are now back in their 5th year for the program. So again, as people who are prone to helping and want to offer advice, we have a tendency to want to tell the staff what they should be doing, and that is not what our job is. Our job is to provide the logistics to help the program. If there's something you see that's disturbing, please tell the site supervisor. They will pass it on, whatever, but we try not to besiege the poor staff, particularly at the end of the season, because you got to keep in mind a lot of their job is crisis management, right? They're dealing with crises. As you can imagine, putting often 8 to 10 stressed families in a very small space, and ours is one of the largest spaces that they will live in during this time. Things happen that are not always fun to deal with, so that's important. So these are our 10 principles for providing and maintaining healthy boundaries. Maintain healthy boundaries when working with our Winter Nights guests. Many guests have had some kind of boundary violation. They've had somebody infringe on their liberty, maybe even had an assault on their personal boundaries, and that makes it hard for them to understand or create healthy limits. It also makes it really important that we create them. Again, our job is to provide a safe place for them when they are here. It is not our job to hire them to do work around our house or to do anything else of that nature, because that is beyond what we are supposed to. We are here to provide a very necessary shelter for them, which allows this program to continue. We provide a structured way of living with a routine and some outcomes which are important because it allows people whose lives have been in a lot of disarray to begin to experience that. Some of the things are pretty tough, like the hour that they have to get up because they've got to get their kids to school, a lot of them, so they get up pretty early. They have to be out. We cannot allow people, for example, to come back into the facility once there is not a staff person here, because you can have accusations about the removal of other people's personal property. There are reasons for the procedures that are established, so we have to respect those. We listen, converse, and validate our guests. That is the best way we can assist. And I will say this, the best thing we can do is to go and just sit down with people and have a meal with them. Not just serve the meal, but sit down with them and have a meal. And then just talk about how your day was. Don't ask them necessarily, well, tell me your story, because they've had to tell their story at every single place where they've been. So it's really a great chance just to sit down and have a conversation with them as you would with somebody else in our fellowship hall after services. Don't try to fix them, just respect them and their dignity. Again, guard against overcaring, because we want to keep the mission of this program, warm, safe lodging and meals, intact. And then I think number 6 is an important one. Always remember to ask yourself, who is being served by the action I am about to take? Often we will do something that actually feeds a need that we may have to feel as if we're being helpful, and that may not actually be in the best interest of our guests. So maintaining professional boundaries so that they don't take advantage of you because they have needs and they're trying to make things work in whatever way they need to make things work. And then also enforcing the program's guidelines. Again, if you see patterns of behavior that seem inappropriate or especially potentially harmful, you need to let the site supervisor know, who will then talk to the program manager. And Winter Nights does keep staff on site as long as the guests are here. There's always a staff person here, and often more than one who's dropping by. Our guests are responsible for the care and supervision of their children, and volunteers need to ask before they do something with the children. Like, we have a beautiful playground, and when it's not in use for our preschool, this is the most common thing that we get into issues with because of the size of our campus. If you want to take a group of kids to the playground, that's wonderful. Just make sure that each kid has checked in with their parent so that parent doesn't have that moment of panic. We've all had it as a parent saying, where are my children, or my child? And so that's an important thing to do. And then do not have contact with our guests outside of the program or after they leave the program, or provide any personal information to them, because that's a violation of the guidelines that we set to keep the program intact and to have it work. So there's also a safe environment policy, which is the other sheet that you have, and Carol Sue's gone through some of that already, but I will just talk about this. This is similar to the rules that we just talked about, and important to look at. The last part, though, on the back page I want to go over, and that is this. Confidentiality is very important. This year in particular, there are a number of families that are from this immediate community where there are connections and people may know them. We have had the experience where we've actually had families that have been associated with the congregation that have been in Winter Nights. It is really important to remember that it is important for people to feel like their story is not going to be spread beyond that. And so if you're going to be volunteering, particularly sometimes people will bring their teens or their younger children, it's really important that your children understand that too. They could very well show up and see someone that they go to school with here. And if they do, they need to understand that that is not something that can be spoken of outside of these walls, because particularly with our young teens and teenagers, that is a form of humiliation that is just really hard for them to bear. So that's important. And then the other part is just that no adult, no staff member will do this and no volunteer will do this. You should not be alone with any of the children. That's just a basic safety procedure in this day and age. That means that we suggest that you, as much as possible when you're volunteering, if you're not needed on site, that you go over and use the restrooms over in the Gilmartin building. And we have a restroom that a lot of people don't know about on the corner of the white building here, which we try to keep generally unlocked during that time. And that way you don't run the risk of going in to use a restroom and then ending up to being in the restroom with one child by yourself, right? So that's just an important thing to keep in mind. Those are the important things. The thing that we'll end on is sort of where I started, which is that our goal is always to make our guests feel as if they are part of our family here while they're here. And in the same way that we wouldn't impose anything on anyone else, we ask that we just treat them as if they are autonomous people, and we respect their worth and dignity. And I know that everyone will do a great job doing that. We're so grateful to all of you for volunteering, and thank you.